Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Winter Moon Tabletop. My name is Chris. On this segment of Tableside Chats, where we talk to board game industry professionals, whether that be designers, developers, publishers, you name it. We enjoy talking with them, getting to know what they do in the industry, and learning about what projects they're working on. And maybe even get a little bit of insight into how you can learn more about getting involved in the industry. Today, I'm excited to have not one, but two guests on the channel, and they're running a live Kickstarter as we speak. I'm here with Marc Specter, who's the Chief Everything Officer and publisher of Grand Gamers Guild, and his social media guy, Glenn Flaherty. Welcome to the show, guys. I'm really glad that you're here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure. I can't wait.
I want to give both of you guys a chance to introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about what you do and maybe how you got into it, and share whatever you feel like sharing, because I think a lot of people who watch this kind of content are interested maybe in having a job in the industry, or learning how they can who they can network with, or how they can network, and things like that. So why don't you talk about how you got involved and just kind of go from there.
Sure. So first, I'll start by saying thank you for calling me an industry professional. That's a far greater compliment than most people pay me. So I have been doing the Grand Gamers Guild thing since 2016, which will put me at just about 8 years. I actually began my origin story in the career, my origin story in the industry about a decade before that. That is to say, I was reintroduced to the world of gaming right around 2005 when a friend invited me to Origins Game Fair, and I had no idea that there was an industry out there as robust as the one even back then. And I got to Origins, and I was a role player. I had been running my own Dungeons and Dragons campaign for years, and would continue it for about a total of 8 years. But when I went to Origins for the first time, I had my mind completely blown by the world of board games and slowly migrated that direction. I tried to figure out how I could attend Origins for free and started volunteering for the convention. Then I started running events. Then I started organizing an entire event group. Then I leveled up into co-founding a convention in my hometown of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I have since left that professional relationship, but it continues on. In fact, I'll be there in 2 weeks running some of my titles. And when I departed from that in 2016, that was when I officially began the publishing. And here we are 8 years later being called a professional.
I mean, that's awesome. And I mean, conventions are a huge gateway for many gamers and, nerds to get involved in the industry. I love conventions. It's one of the big reasons I ended up in the industry, or, connected as well. So what was the name of the con? I don't know if I've heard
the
of
one
it.
that I co-founded was called Grand Con, or it is called Grand Con. And with the exception of 2020, when it was canceled, it's going into its 10th year, although I'm responsible for only about 4 of those 10.
Glenn, you kind of dabble in a lot of different areas of the tabletop industry with marketing and social media. Do you want to give a little bit of background as well? Talk about maybe what you do and how you got into it?
Now that I'm thinking about it, I think Marc was almost the very first person I ever encountered in gaming. For real. And I am not even sure how it happened. Years ago, I guess around 2016, 8 years ago. And I was with my wife. I was doing music for a living. She was always in front of a computer, and I wanted us to spend some time together. So I said, I'm going to buy a board game. I think I bought Scrabble. I don't know what I did. Anyway, we had a good time. I said, I'm going to buy another, I'll go buy another game, but I don't know what game there is. So let me see if I can find some information. Really wasn't too much information. I think I discovered that there was Tom Vassell, and he had a YouTube channel. He might even said he had a podcast, and I wasn't even big into listening to podcasts, but I turned into the podcast. I'm talking about, I'm 1 week into gaming. Okay. All I own is Scrabble. Maybe I now own King of Tokyo or something. And I said, or maybe I bought King of Tokyo because I heard it on Dice Tower. One way or the other. I'm like 1 week in. I listened to one episode of Dice Tower, and he's like, hey, we need contributors. If you want to contribute, let me know. I was like, all right, fine. So I wrote in and said, I'd love to contribute. He said, great, you're on the show. Start next week. So I was on the podcast after 1 week, and I own like one game. And I don't know how Marc found me, but Marc contacted me and asked me to review something. on real estate.
I was going to say it was probably on real estate, and probably because, I mean, with your channel name of Board Games and Bourbon, that's right up my alley. So I
Okay.
knew we were kindred spirits even back then.
Okay. Yeah. And so what happened was after like I bought like King of Tokyo or whatever, it was actually my wife's idea. I was going to make a video just to show people I had a little bit of bourbon because a student had bought me a bourbon, and she said, why don't you make a video to show our friends how to play the game? I said, all right, fine. She said, you should call it Board Games and Bourbon. And so I made a video, and I uploaded like one video to the channel. As soon as I did that, I started getting messages from like Asia, Russia, people asking me to talk about their games. It was kind of crazy how that happened. And like I said, 1 week later, I'm on the Dice Tower. Who knows what I'm talking about? I'm sure I made no sense and had no perspective. Fast forward, I said, well, I've been talking about board games for a while. I'm going to see if I can make one. And I had already been doing marketing for my own business. I had a music business, and it was doing well. It was robust. I think I was actually watching, I was like halfway through every single episode of 30 something. It was like 2 a.m, that or the Golden Girls. I said, I'm going to try to make my own game. And I said, well, what do I like? Well, I like dice. That's fun. And I like cards. Those are fun. I'll put them together. And that's how I made a game called Siege of Valeria. It was called Space Dice. And it was about like killing like these aliens who, if you kill them, their spirit possessed you and you absorbed their powers, and then you just became a monster and attacked everybody else. I said, well, let me see if somebody can help me make a sell sheet. I didn't know how to make a sell sheet. So I contacted my friend David, who runs Daily Magic. I said, David, I'm not pitching you a game. I just want you to know, I want you to tell me if the sell sheet has the stuff on it that I need on a sell sheet. And he says, yes, it does. And I want to sign the game. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So I didn't even pitch it to anybody, and it got signed. So it was like super easy, but David had no idea how to market anything. Like I said, okay, I want this game to have some legs and get some good reviews. Let me do marketing for you. And it was going really well. When we first launched, our sales went up by like tenfold. And somehow I started talking to Marc. I was like, dude, Marc, I got to tell you, use these tactics. And then Marc was like, well, will you do it for me? I said,
I probably told you how much I hated social media.
Yeah.
And you said, oh, well, I don't hate it near as much as you do. I'll take my time to do it.
Okay. Well, that might be it. And, he loves society. You'll find this out the more you talk to him. And so I ended up doing the social media for him, and then maybe like 3 or 4 other people. Even like right now, a new client I'm dealing with has a really scary game called Stifling Dark. And Marc introduced me to some authors, and I do it for brick and mortar stores. And I love it when I talk to brick and mortar, because I refer to them as brick and mortar. When I say that, they know that I'm actually in the business and know what I'm talking about. But I have been learning, and Marc's been very gracious because he's given me the bandwidth to experiment, which I don't always get. So it's really been wonderful.
And I just want to say I have a bone to pick with you about Siege of Valeria.
Oh, okay.
I love that game. It was fantastic. I came within cards of winning. I had 2 sieges left and I lost.
Good.
So I got someone to be mad at now.
Well, you know what? I will tell you this to be fair. That game went through evolutions. I mathed the whole game out. So if you were clever and just took a few risks, you would always have a chance to win the game. People were finding it way too hard, so they try to make it a little bit easier. But if you want it tougher, there's a way to make it tougher, and there's expansion. Also, in the fall, they're doing a mat and expansion in new languages, and maybe a multiplayer mode.
Anybody who's been watching the channel has seen me cover a lot of Grand Gamers Guild titles recently, and one that I got was Tir na nog, which had some buzz around it. If you were at Gen Con, it's been received really well. In fact, it was sold out, right? And now it's been put back on Kickstarter for a reprint, and it's coming with an expansion and a bunch of other goodies. So who would like to talk about that? Because I could talk about Tir na nog all day. It's a great game. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed it, because I've played a lot of games like it. But there was I talked about it in my review. I really loved the drafting system, and it was really interesting mechanic. I don't think I've seen anything quite like that before. And I don't know, for me, it just felt satisfying and rewarding, and it was just a ton of fun. And so I can see why it did well. I can see why it sold out, and it's got some buzz around it. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about that? Maybe Marc, do you want to kind of share maybe how this came about?
So Tuna Note came about in a conversation, an overseas conversation with co-designer Isaac Shalev. He had done some development work on Unreal Estate as well. And when he and I were hanging out at UK Games Expo, we started riffing on real estate, and conversation kind of ended with me saying, well, look, if you want to do more with that, go talk to Jason Slingerland and see what you guys can conjure up together, and I'll certainly consider it. And I think that was, well, literally pre-pandemic, presented a design to me, and we were kind of off to the races. And to be fair, it was a good design, but the way it has been taken up by everyone has really been astonishing. If you look back at my publishing career, it's a career of mostly middling success. I harbor the illusion that perseverance and hard work will eventually win the day. Whether this is that moment or not, I have no idea. But that's really all I bring to the table, is that I just don't stop. I just keep going, and hopefully you hit gold eventually.
Perseverance and an unyielding, upward-looking point of view. That's
you have to be an optimist to keep going in this industry. And so, essentially, it is sold out. The Kickstarter was successful, but modestly successful. I really thought we would see numbers much closer to what Garinto did, which was 80,000 backers. I felt like thematically this was much more appealing. I felt like mechanically it was just as sound of a product. And so I was very grateful to the backers who made it happen, but had expected more. I thought we would publish this project, do a little bit of fulfillment and post Kickstarter sales, and we would move on. But that is
game you just. I'm sorry. Excuse me 1 second. What was that game you just said was 80,000 backers?
No, not 80,000 backers. $80,000.
Okay. I maybe misheard you. I was gonna say.
I was like 80,000 backers. No,
dude. If I misspoke and said 80,000 backers, that was truly wishful thinking. I have never had a campaign like that. I will. I'm
not going to edit that out either. I'm leaving it.
Yeah, that's going to be the headline.
Campaign 80,000 backers.
How to get
80,000? Yeah, guaranteed 80,000 backers or your money back.
Tuna Note settled out, and I thought we would have our fun with it and we would move past it. But it has been received with accolades universally. I have not heard hardly a negative word about it. It has sold out in distribution in the first month. Every copy was sold, and the amounts that I bought to both Gen Con and Origins were completely sold out. I had said to myself prior to con season that if we were to ever reprint it, we'd probably looking at mid 2025, just because I had other things in the pipeline. But every time I turned around, there was more buzz about it. I've learned from my mistake. I made a mistake a number of years ago with the Artemis project, which did really, really well. And that mistake was that I did not capitalize on its crowdfunding success and its subsequent convention success by immediately putting out additional content. We did do content years later, and that content did well, but not nearly as well as it could have done had I been aware of what one should do in that situation. So I course corrected, and here we are with that successful second campaign doing very, very well. We're actually closing in on the same number of backers that we finished the GameFound campaign with. Not 80,000.
Yeah. And I was just looking at it. You are currently, as of the time of this recording, 3,147% funded. And you got just 844 backers, 15 days to go. So you're about halfway through, as you guys did a 30-day campaign, right?
Yes. Well, just about 30 days. It was a little bit less than that. I actually was going to do a much shorter campaign, but was convinced that the game needed time to spread its wings and grow and not be so quick in and out. So we did about a 3.5-week campaign. And I think this has been an interesting experience in the sense that it has changed my perspective for campaigns going forward.
Well, Marc, you kind of nailed it, I think, when you talked about perseverance. It's one of those things where, like, you can get that mindset and people look at you like, you're crazy. You're such an optimist. It's not realistic, right? But I think that is half the battle. Negative mindset doesn't help you at all. It's not doing you any favors. And I think, I've seen it before where, like, publishers will put out a game, all of a sudden that game just launches them, right? And it's amazing. And I wanted to ask Glenn what your experience is like, because when you do social media in general is a very desolate place. And it can be, right? It's so competitive. It's so time consuming and tedious. So when you are creating marketing around a game that's got buzz and success around it, like Tiernanog, what are some strategies that you use to kind of keep that momentum, and like what's worked for you guys?
One, you're correct. Point of view is everything. Let me take the larger perspective of, you can say things one of two ways. You can say, and I'm speaking to the point of perspective for Marc, and how you frame things is very important, not only for marketing and for psyche, but I'm also a big believer that you always treat employees the way you treat them as if they're customers.
Mm-hmm.
You're always, active when you do this stuff. Perspective. If I'm making a post, if I'm talking to employees, if I'm talking to potential clients, I never say, don't forget to do X, Y, and Z. What I do say is, remember to do X, Y, and Z. So I say remember, I don't say don't forget. That sounds subtle, perhaps not important, but those little shiftaroos really can make a difference. Now, of course, when I'm off the record and I'm talking to Marc through Messenger and I'm griping about all of humanity, that's a separate thing. But in terms of everything else, perspective really matters. And it does mean a lot to have an upward facing viewpoint with your own sensibility and the companies and everything. Now, how do you market it? Well, I've had my marketing experience from my own business, which was, in the past, my business was a multi-million-dollar business. And so a lot of that translated into how you talk to people in board games. But I've also been learning and growing as we go. The big thing is, one, you want to be authentic. Two, you want to remember that you want the consumer to be in the trenches and in the story with you. You don't want to be like the used car salesman with a hard sell, like, hey, everybody, pork chops are $2 off, and they're the best pork chops you'll ever have. You don't want to be like that. So you try sometimes to have like a voice for the games. Like when I had been, and just the contrast, the different companies. I ran a campaign for a company who would put out like retro music games. Well, I would try to have like retro language and use retro fonts and try to create the environment that envelops you. There's another company who is set in a like a French medieval world, and I would talk like that and set the stage there. And when I do the Grand Gamers Guild and we're talking about like, kind of like carving out who our identity is, you want to put the player in the role of the game. So you focus on the fun they're going to have with it, where they're going to end up by interacting with the game. It's not really, and social media is for them. But I will also say too, if your question is, how do you market a game? Marketing is much more than social media. Social media is but one leg. You have like your newsletters, you have your product placement, you have, all types of different aspects that are involved. I'm a big fan of, I'm not even concerned if the games are in front of like, it's always great to have games in front of people who move the needle, but I'm more concerned with people who make great content that people want to watch. Like there's a lot of channels out there who have a lot of subscribers, but man, their coverage is donkey. And I do not even want to look at it. I don't want to look at your face. I don't want to listen to your bad audio because your light, in the video, because the lighting's bad or whatever.
And at the end of the day, I mean, people come back for a good game, right? Like that's what it's all about. It's about making a quality game. And you touched on something that I wanted to just maybe pitch over to Marc real quick and ask him, because when I've dabbled in design, I've tried to get some designs out there. And one thing that jumped out at me that I learned was that you really want your players to feel like they're doing the thing they're supposed to be doing, right? Like they have to emotionally connect with the game. Some games do that better than others. I'm not a big Euro guy because those tend to be a little bit blander or lighter on theme. I love thematic games. And Tiernanog was surprisingly thematic for a game that is really a tableau building and sort of set collecting game. I did feel like I was immersed in the lore and backstory of the game. So Marc, like how important is it that Grand Gamers Guild games effectively capture that emotion for the player? Like, is that a pillar of what your publishing stands for?
Well, it's certainly something that we go for. I mean, whether we nail it every time is another question, because again, I mean, let's go back to Garinto, which was really just an abstract engine builder. There, the theme, the story we were telling didn't matter at all. But I think we really did a great job with it. And when I think about the line of games that I've put out, I do think we do a good job of cinching the theme to the mechanics with the Artemis Project and with Endangered, and now with Tirna Nog. The Holiday Hijinks games, I mean, they kind of are stories in and of themselves. So that's almost inherent to the design itself.
In the interest of time, I did want to talk about some of the things you're doing with this Kickstarter, because it's not just the game. You're releasing a expansion side by side with it, and then one of the goodies there is an escape room, right? Can you guys talk a little bit about the expansion, what it's going to add? Because I don't know if I am fully aware.
Of course. So the expansion is called Blessings and Burdens, and the team has been working on modular experiences that can be singly inserted or inserted in whatever joyful combination you want to put in, but they're just basically going to bend the game in different ways. We've shared one module, let's call it, which is the Blessed Realms, which basically has to do with, as we talked about earlier, you have the diminishing hand, which was introduced during development of the original game, because not having that diminishing hand really affected the emotion of the game around the table. Now we have the diminishing hand, and you get rid of a card that you may need or you may not need. Now getting rid of that card is actually going to matter, in the sense that it's going to affect another scoring opportunity. And the color of the card you get rid of is going to affect how that color scores. And so what you get rid of and what your opponents get rid of is going to have a tangible effect on the way that contiguous color block scoring manifests at the end of the game. And there's more to come, but I like to let the backers be the first people to hear stuff. And we're not officially releasing that until Monday. So I'll just have to say, pledge $1, pledge for a full pledge, and stay tuned, and you'll learn about the other stuff. The other piece of the equation you asked about was the 18-card escape room style adventure, which has kind of become inadvertently a tentpole of my company. It's not something I ever knew we were going to do for the long haul, and yet now it's something that people definitely come to the booth for. So this is sort of the third iteration of what we're going for, where we take the 18-card escape room style format and we lay it into, or layer it with, one of our IPs, the first one being Tirna Nog. So this is going to be the story of being whisked away to Tirna Nog and having to prove your mettle and survive the journey. And it's going to have all the hallmarks of the other 18-card escape room games. Plays in about an hour. It has a graduated hint system that you access at my website, and you don't destroy anything, so you can pass it on to a friend when you're done.
You've got this sort of world you're building with Tirna Nog and all this lore, all this rich history that's sort of based in this, mysterious world. And so there's a lot of gray area for different types of games, perhaps, in this universe. Do you have any plans for continuing this IP into different genres, maybe, and keeping the sort of world building alive?
The great thing about this game is, I always tell Marc, I'm like, Marc, first of all, when we're marketing the games, it's a visual medium, right? Tirna Nog is a beautiful game. And I think, unlike too many games, Marc can correct me if I'm wrong, I think this one actually got the proper leg it needed, where, Isaac's been really good about showing it off at conventions and getting ground support for it. It looks really good. Most importantly, though, of course, the game delivers, right? So, marketing is all the, is the surrounding. It's the fuel, but the game is the fire, right? Exactly. And so the fire is there. But this one really has everything in the right place. It looks great. We had time to show it to convention goers. It's been building that organic awareness that really has helped it explode. Now, as far as the universe, I think it absolutely is. There's another universe with Grand Gamers Guild, the Artemis universe. So there's a bunch of sci-fi games. I even made a roll and write in that universe. And that is growing its own legs. And I think too, the success, I would say this really at the moment is a 2-pillar company. It is Holiday Hijinks, and I would say Artemis is another major pillar, where he's creating this universe. I can totally see Tir Nanogue, it's so whimsical, transformative, and all inclusive. Really, you could have a lot of stories. You could have worker placements. You could have all types of things going on there. That would really be inviting and escapist. I mean, I think it has a lot of really great things. Another killer thing about it is how unique the art is. There's a lot of qualities that make it singular. But Marc, you can speak more to the future.
I have a semi-permanent plan set up for years to come. But like I said earlier, one of the things I'm willing to do when it is necessary and appropriate is to interrupt my own plan. And I'm definitely not against, if we get the right game and it feels like a Tir Nanogue universe game, I'm not against pursuing that. I mean, the Irish Celtic mythology is literally based on storytelling, oral storytelling, written storytelling.
Right, exactly.
So the ability to tell many stories through many games is something I'd absolutely be keen to do.
Telling a story in a board game, in my opinion, is difficult to do because, I mean, I love video games. Video games are my first love. You can connect with, you're immersed in the game. It's hard to capture that same emotion in a board game. I think it can be done, but it is challenging. Believe it or not, we're just about out of time, and I wanted to give you both a chance to plug anything else you felt like you wanted to, plug, whether it's about the current Kickstarter or anything else coming down the line for Grand Gamers Guild. I'll give you both that opportunity now.
First thing that comes to mind is Tir Nanogue is a game that I really do think almost anyone can jump in right away. I mean, unless you're like a toddler. It's a game anyone can play. The rules are very straightforward. It's not a heavy rule set. It's not complicated to understand. But the decision making within it is quite cool. And it's a game that evolves as you play, which I really enjoy. And if I had to say what makes this game unique, what the real selling point of that game to me is, it's not like, okay, it's a worker placement, put worker down, do action, exchange resources. Here, the game is a lot about gambling with what you need. You have to choose where to put your person, but you're not guaranteed what you're going to have to do. You have to hedge your bets. You have to roll with the punches if what you want went away. It didn't go your way now. Now you have to figure out a way to correct it as the game goes on, by changing colors or, these kind of things as the game goes on with the mechanics. So I think it's a very fulfilling game. Like I said, I think it lives up to the hype. So that's a game people would like. But bigger than that, number 3 on the SN hot list on BGG is Inferno. That's a game we're putting out. That one is going to be, I have a copy of it here, man. That one looks very cool. I think that's one everyone should check out because I think that's going to be a lot of fun, especially when winter rolls around. That'll be, on those dark nights when you bust out your Dante's Inferno game. Very cool.
Yes, Tir Nanogue is funded on Kickstarter. Take a look, give it a pledge, whatever suits your fancy. And hot on the heels of Essen, we also have the Holiday Hijinks collection. I'm very excited to bring this to crowdfunding for the very first time. We're going to be putting out 3 new titles all at once, and it's going to become in a very sweet collector's box. Glenn already mentioned Inferno. It's on a boat. It's going to land here on September 20th. Should get that out to you in plenty of time. I guess I'll plug one other thing, which is the Belgian Beers Race Dice. A few years ago, I partnered with BYR Games out of Belgium to do Belgian Beers Race. It's taken a little bit longer than it should have. We missed the entirety of con season, but the Belgian Beers Race Dice is finally here. And if you enjoyed the spirit of the Belgian Beers Race and you enjoy the idea of cycling and hitchhiking and taking public transport around Belgium just to raise a glass of your favorite beverage, then Belgian Beers Race Dice will help you get your fix in some interesting new mechanics and a shorter time frame.
And that Hijinks campaign in Kickstarter is going to be very unique.
Yes, that's true.
You have to check it out. We're going to have some neat surprises. I think it's going to be a campaign unlike others you have ever been part of before.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to come on the show, join me talking about Tir Nanogue and other stuff that's going on. Those of you who are watching, make sure you get connected to Grand Gamers Guild on their social media, check out their website so that you can stay up to date with what's happening and get the latest news. I want to thank you both again for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
And I'm going to take a note out of Glenn's book and say, remember to subscribe and like this video. It really helps me out a lot and motivates me to keep doing content like this. My name is Chris. Thank you for joining me on Winter Moon Tabletop for this segment of Tableside Chats, and I will see you next time.